Well, good morning. Happy Friday, and we're glad to have you back with us, and I'm glad to have you back with me. And so we're continuing our look at First Peter, and today we are actually making a big jump into an entirely new section of the book, which I'll explain in a moment. But it's going to begin with verse 11. So if you could read us First Peter, chapter 2, verse 11.
Of course. Dear friends, I warn you, as temporary residents and foreigners, to keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls.
You know, when I'm writing a sermon, generally there's a structure to it, and there's a pretty complex structure, that I really try to put in to sermons. But at the kind of the superficial level of it, right, there's an introduction. You got to get people's attention and kind of like connect with them a little bit. And then you've got to sort of share the theory, right? Kind of what's going on here in the Bible. Let's talk about it. What's the kind of this point or truth or whatever that we're really focusing on today. And then you have the application section. Okay, what do we do with this? How do we apply this in our lives? And a lot of commentators read Peter actually in very much the same way. They see that very, very beginning section as the greetings and connecting with people. Then the last section we had was, it was practical, but it was theological, right? And it was sort of kind of giving us the sense of who are we? And it was going back, just like I do in sermons, going back to what the scriptures for him, the Old Testament. He's going back and showing kind of how do these things align together, picking out a piece from Isaiah, picking out a piece from Deuteronomy, picking up a piece from the Psalms, and putting together this whole argument to make a point. And now, starting in verse 11, all the way really through 5:11, is the application. Okay. As a result of all of that stuff that I've told you, how are you going to live? And so, in chapter 2, in the beginning of chapter 2, he made a jump towards being more practical. Now he really takes a kind of a full in, okay, it's application time, friends. And so in that, he begins, because he knows he's going to say some hard things. And so the way the NLT had it, I noticed as you were reading, is dear friends. But I feel like that's a little soft. That's really what he says is something more on the lines of like, it's so much more powerful, like, beloved, but that's not a word we would use very often today. And so I don't quite know the right way to say like, I love you so much, hear this. That's really the spirit of that, dear friends. And when everybody says that, what comes next is going to hurt a little bit. Yeah. And so then he launches in, he says, I warn you, as temporary residents and foreigners, to keep away from worldly desires that wage against your very souls. And so he's recognizing that a lot of these people are engaging in a kind of worldliness that is normal. They're just being a part of the world. And yet Peter's spent all of this time in his kind of theology section in the beginning of chapter 2 showing you're not like that. You're different from the world. You were chosen out of the world. You're a holy people. You're a royal priesthood. It's like you're God's special possession. You're different. And so he's reminding us we're only here for a short time, temporary residents, and foreigners, meaning this language should seem weird to us and unnatural, kind of the dominant language. The dominant culture should feel uncomfortable and unfamiliar. This isn't your home. And yet there's a way, I think, as Christians kind of going through life, and we do it today, and I think the people in Peter's day were doing it too. It's one thing like 2-3 years after Jesus died, everybody's kind of like hyped up, but you go back to regular life and you think, okay, now I'm just going to be normal and I'm going to fit in and I want to fit in with my peers and I want to have what everybody else has. I want to be like everybody else is. And he's recognizing that temptation to just be like everyone else. It's a worldly desire that wars against your soul. It actually makes you a weaker Christian.
I've alluded to this in previous devotions, but the idea for me that Sunday, that act of going to church, that real reconnection, it is reminding me again whose I am, and then the community around me. And so I'm seeing people around me who have also chosen, they're set apart, and they're choosing a different way. And so that lack of that now, of that interaction with others who are set apart in this world and not being worldly, also just takes a blow, I think, to my own discernment and my own choice making, because I'm not, it's not that regular practice, of being reminded through our community.
I had an experience of kind of the way that the worldly desires wage against our souls. I was actually at a Red Sox game with another high rocker, and somebody had given us some free tickets, but they were really good tickets. And so we were surrounded by a bunch of other season ticket holders. As we looked at the actual value of the seats, they were really expensive. And then around us, these people are ordering all of this food and drinks. But, at Fenway, you order the crab legs or whatever it was at Fenway, or the lobster roll. It was like $25, right, for something this tiny. And I'm just like, wow, this is just a lot of money being kind of poured out here. And, so many drink after drink after drink, round after round after round. And this high rocker and I were reflecting, like, how is it, like, I feel like these people look like us in a lot of ways. I don't feel like they look like they're that much wealthier than we are. How do they possibly have the money to do this, right? Multiple times a week, these people are coming as season ticket holders. And we were just kind of talking about that and just noticing it, observing it, and suddenly realized, you know what? If I didn't tithe, I'd have a ton more money than just that, right? But I keep on giving away so much money because I think that's what God called us to do. I know it's what God called us to do. And it was one of these moments for both of us. It was such a stark reminder. Oh yeah, some of this looks attractive and fun, but we're not like other people. And we don't get to have what they have. We don't get to do what they do. We're not supposed to compare ourselves to them. I was called for a different purpose. And yeah, okay, so I've been given stewardship over a certain amount of money, and other people being stewardship at a certain amount of money. And there's a calling to what I'm supposed to do with that. And if I do it just like my neighbors, and I do it just like everybody else, I'm doing it wrong, right? But I see the appeal of those things because they look really pleasant.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think we don't want to be looking around for comparison for other people, and yet sometimes that's the way we get feedback on how are we doing? How are we doing by looking? Are we looking different, or are we just blending in?
And so maybe then the real question, kind of combining your thought about church and my thought about Fenway, is we want to be mindful about to whom we are comparing ourselves. That there is a way that I can watch other Christians who are doing things that are sacrificial and beautiful and life-giving for them and for others, and think, hey, I want some of that. I love the life that is flowing out of their lives. I love the fruit of the Spirit that I see growing in them, and I want to make the kind of decisions they're making. They're going to have that kind of result in my life. On the other hand, I have to be very cautious of looking at other people around me and seeing what they do, seeing what they have, seeing the way they behave or think, and trying to fit in and thinking, well, then I should be able to do or have or whatever, that very same thing. And I just think that way of thinking is going to be a trap. And it is going to cut me off from my calling, which in fact is going to be the very thing that makes me not experience fullness of life.
I mean, it also almost takes discipline when you feel yourself in comparison or looking at the world like, oh, I'd like that or whatever. Reminding myself that the gift that I'm receiving and the weight of that gift is so much greater than anything else that could be. So it takes like that discipline, I think.
Yeah. We're probably short on time now, but I want to make one other point that's just occurred to me as we're talking about this. Sometime back, I read a story. It's actually I think it's a New York Times opinion piece by Tim Keller, talking about the fact that Christians don't quite fit well in our current two-party system because neither party quite represents the Christian message, right? Christians are called to be different. And I've thought about how, he has a great explanation. I think it's worth really reading that article if you haven't. But that idea that we are supposed to be different. And I then saw another person who'd posted sort of in a response to that idea, some of the effect of all we're going to find out on November 3rd, well, they said, but not November 3rd, as it turns out. All we're going to find out in the election is which work we need to do. Because, if Trump wins, then we need to do the work of fighting for the poor and the alien and the people of color and all that. If Biden wins, we need to do the work of fighting for the unborn and, kind of individual freedoms and a whole bunch of other different things. And so I felt like, okay, either way, we have prophetic work. And so either way, my party won't win on, in the election. All that can happen is that I will now have a calling because I'm I'm a foreigner to both sides. I'm an emissary, hopefully, from God's kingdom.
That is good.
All right. Well, with all that, would you be willing to close us in prayer?
Sure. Father, I thank you for Peter's way of preparing his audience, reminding them that they are both dearly loved by you and by him. Lord, I thank you that he can speak truth and remind us that we are set apart, that God, that you have given us so many riches, and that they look different than the world sometimes. And God, that is a good thing. So point out the places in us that we might be needing to be more set apart, that to be looking a little bit different. God, I thank you for the reminder again of what an amazing gift you have given us. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend.